Good morning, Year 9. I hope you're well and having a lovely day. Please write the date and the title of Skin. Do now. What do you think makes a good story opening? Pause the video for 5 minutes in order to answer that question now. So today we'll be looking at narrative hooks. What do you think a narrative hook is? Take a moment to jot down your ideas. So a narrative hook is a device used by a writer to grab the reader's attention. There are lots of different types of narrative hooks. Please make sure you've written that down. So let's think about some different types. You've got the puzzling hook. This immediately makes you ask questions of the story. The direct address hook, where you are spoken to directly and feel involved from the start. The subtle hook. This appeals to your sense of curiosity. Who is she? Who is he? What's going on? The atmospheric hook. This is descriptive and could evoke any variety of moods. The visual hook appeals to our sense of sight. The funny hook. This is a tricky hook and only works if it appeals to your audience's sense of humour. And the direct speech hook. This implies lots of action and a fast pace. So please could you pause the video for a moment and write down these different types of hooks and their definitions. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is match up the hooks with the examples. Which one do you find to be most effective, or which one do you find appeals to you most and why? So you need to use the document that's attached on class charts in order to do this. Pause the video to do that now. You have about 10 minutes. Okay, so these are the answers. Firstly, you got the puzzle hook, immediately making you ask questions. Claire and her monster move through the darkening hall, taking care to keep to one side, out of sight of the kitchen, of course. So what kind of questions would you be asking? Well, who is Claire and why has she got a monster? Is it an actual monster, a literal monster, or a metaphorical monster? Is it actually a person? And why is she keeping out of sight? Who else is in there, in the kitchen? Is it someone who would destroy her or the monster? Or is she just being careful but there's nobody actually there? So you've got lots of questions, and that's a really engaging way to hook the audience. Then you've got the direct address hook. Do you ever think about being born? So here you've got a rhetorical question that makes the reader think and thereby engages them. Then the subtle hook. She started with the universe. So who is she? What does it mean, the universe? Is that a metaphor? Is she drawing something? Is she thinking about things? So it's similar to the puzzling hook, but more subtle. It's not so obviously requiring lots of questions. Then the atmospheric hook. A cold, wet and damp day in December. The clouds were so low they seemed to trail their mists in the treetops, and already, at 3:30, it was dark within the forest. So here we've got a clear description referring to imagery, very detailed and graphic description. Then you got the visual hook. Our classroom looked smashing. Lots of silver tinsel and crepe paper and lanterns. We even had fairy lights. So it's similar to the atmospheric hook because it's using imagery, but this description focuses on the sight as opposed to any other senses, and it's really effective. And the funny hook. When Bill Simpson woke up on Monday morning, he found he was a girl. He was standing, staring at himself in the mirror, quite baffled, when his mother swept in. "Why don't you wear this pretty pink dress?" she said. So maybe some of you aren't laughing. I'm not. That's the problem with the funny hook. It's got to appeal to audience's sense of humour, and everyone's got a slightly different sense of humour. So some people like slapstick comedy, some people like wry comedy, some people like tongue-in-cheek, other people kind of like satire, which is one I would enjoy, political parodies. It all depends on what kind of person you are. So funny hook isn't always the best one, and isn't one I would advise you using at this stage. And then you've got the direct speech hook. I don't care if your friend Darren has a python, a cockatoo, and a marmoset monkey, said Mum. The answer's still no. So we've got speech being used. You could argue that this is actually the funny hook. And so if you said this is funny hook, that's correct too, because I would argue that this is actually more funny than the previous one. So even if you didn't get them quite right, I'm sure you could argue, make a case for different links in certain situations. But please do make a note of the examples and what they're linked to on the PowerPoint. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is read lines 1 to 14 of Skin, which is attached on class charts, and answer these questions. What do we learn about the main character Draioli? What tone has been set and how has that been achieved? And what narrative hooks has Roald Dahl used? Pause the video for 5 to 10 minutes to do that now. Answers. He is old, shuffled, he is cold and unhappy. There is a feeling of unease due to the pathetic fallacy, the fact that set in winter, a freezing wind is blowing. This creates a sense that something bad may happen. The first character we are introduced to is old and unhappy. He has used an atmospheric hook through his description of the weather, but also a subtle hook through the description of the man. Pause the video to check your work and make sure you've got all of that written down. Okay, so your next set of questions. How long ago was it that he had met Soutine? What could Soutine do so well? Why were they celebrating the night Draioli was remembering? What was Draioli's idea? What does Soutine paint? Do you have any idea where this story is going? Is that a kind of narrative hook? And what technique is being used to recount the story of Soutine? So read through lines 15 to 87 of the story and use that information to answer these questions. Pause the video to do that now. Answers. He had met him over 30 years ago. Soutine could paint well. Draioli wanted to celebrate because he had made a great deal of money. His idea was that Soutine would paint a picture on his back and then tattoo over it. Soutine painted a picture of Draioli's wife. Your opinion. Yes, it is an example of a puzzling hook. The technique being used is a flashback where the author goes back in time to fill in the missing parts of the story. Pause the video to check your work and make sure you've got this written down. Next, read lines 89 to 125. What happened to Draioli after the Second World War? Why is Draioli asked to leave the gallery? Why did he take off his clothes? What do you think will happen next? And what is so effective about how Roald Dahl has written the story so far? Pause the video to answer these questions. His wife died, his business dried up, and he returned to Paris. It's a very smart gallery, and Draioli looks run down. He takes off his clothes to show the tattoo of the painting. Your opinion. We are still not sure where the story is going. We are invested in wanting to know what is going to happen after we read the flashback about Draioli and Soutine. Pause the video to check your work and make sure you've got this written down. Right, thank you very much for your work today. I hope you found Skin an interesting story, and I look forward to exploring it more with you next time. So thank you very much and speak to you tomorrow.